my father, handed my sister the company I built. I walked away, joined our biggest client, and watched the firm that ignored me collapse without me. For 14 years, I worked for Matthews Commercial Construction, my family's firm. I began as a worker during summer breaks when I was 22, learned estimating in college, and finally became the operations manager after graduating with an engineering degree. Clara had been living her life in New York, following a marketing profession and taking infrequent vacations, whilst I had been here developing, growing, and sacrificing. "Ethan," my father's voice cut through my thoughts. "Did you hear what I said?" I blinked, concentrating on the three faces that had turned toward me. "Sorry, what?" I said. "This doesn't change your position with the company. You'll still be operations manager." Dad's tone was comforting, as if he was doing me a favor. "Clara will be taking over as CEO when I retire next year, but your role is secure." My sister grinned at me with a mix of sympathy and triumph. At 34, she was 2 years younger than me, but she carried herself with the assurance of someone who had just been given the keys to the kingdom, which I assumed. "Ethan," she replied softly and with seasoned tenderness, "I hope you know how much I value your expertise. I couldn't do this without you." I glanced at her, wondering if she truly believed Clara had worked for the company for exactly 1 year. 1 year, versus 14 years. "Why?" The query slipped out before I could stop it. "Why Clara and not me?" The room went silent. Logan became really interested in organizing his briefcase. My mother's smile tightened. Dad cleared his throat. "Ethan, we've discussed this. Clara has the vision for where the company needs to go. She's better with people. The clients love her. You're brilliant with operations, with the technical side, but I'm not CEO material," I concluded for him. "That's not what I'm saying," he answered. But his gaze wandered away from me. Mom stepped forward. "Darling, you're a crucial part of the company. You can still help from behind the scenes. Clara will need your support." Behind the scenes. The statement struck me like a physical blow. That's where I've always been, right? Behind the scenes, making things happen while others take credit. Clara stood and approached me, grasping my hands in her own. "Ethan, this partnership will be amazing. You know the operations inside and out, and I can bring in the big clients. We'll be unstoppable together." I glanced into her eyes, which were the same hazel as mine and our father's, and all I saw was confidence. She genuinely believed she deserved it. "Congratulations," I eventually replied, pulling my hands away from hers. "If you'll excuse me, I have work to finish." I turned and went out of the conference room, disregarding my mother's calls for my name. The familiar hallway of Matthews Commercial Construction felt weird, as if I were viewing it through a stranger's eyes. Photographs adorned the walls, depicting construction projects, ribbon cuttings, and handshakes with major clients. My father appeared prominently in the majority of them. Clara appeared in several recent ones. I looked but couldn't find one with me. Behind the scenes, certainly. That night, I sat on my balcony with a bottle of whiskey and my laptop, examining project files as I had done many times before. My flat overlooked downtown, and the city lights twinkled like stars. In the distance I could see numerous buildings we'd built over the years, including the recently completed Harrington Tower, our largest project to date, and the one that established Matthews as a genuine contender for significant commercial developments. The Harrington project had been my baby since the beginning. I'd been up for 3 days straight preparing that bid, calculating costs down to the last penny, and creating the novel construction technique that had earned us the contract over organizations twice our size. Dad had been the face of the presentations, of course, but the content had been entirely mine. Clara had sent me a text message. "Hey bro, I know today was a shock. Let's grab lunch tomorrow and talk through the transition. I value your input more than anyone's." I took another drink of whiskey and did not respond. My computer beeped with an email message, another issue with the West Side development that required my attention. Always something that required my attention. I had been working 70-hour weeks for years. Holidays spent on job sites, vacations cut short by emergency calls, and personal relationships sacrificed for the sake of the family business. All because I believed that one day, I will own the company. What a fool I had been. I shut down my laptop and leaned back in my chair, peering up at the night sky. A conclusion was building in my head, becoming clearer with each passing moment. If I wasn't going to inherit the company, and if all of my efforts were worth so little to my family, maybe it was time to reevaluate my level of dedication. No more 70-hour weeks. No more emergency calls in the middle of the night. I won't be sacrificing my life for Matthews Commercial Construction anymore. From now on, I would work my scheduled hours. No more or less. I would take the weekends off. I would use my vacation days, and most importantly, I would begin exploring for other options. The concept should have scared me. Instead, it felt like freedom. The next morning, I arrived at the workplace at 8 a.m. sharp. Almost an hour later than my typical start time. Several employees did double takes when I walked through the front entrance, coffee in hand. "Everything okay, Ethan?" inquired Grace, our receptionist, who had been with the company longer than I had. "Never better," I said, smiling. "Beautiful morning, isn't it?" My office was already vibrating with messages. 4 voicemails from superintendents on various job sites, 16 emails designated as urgent, and 3 project managers standing outside my door. I greeted the project managers, listened to their issues, and gave them clear, unambiguous advice in 40 minutes. No hand-holding. No assuming their troubles as mine own. Simply easy management. Clara appeared at my doorstep at midday. "Ready for lunch?" "Can't today," I responded, staring at my computer. "I've got plans." She paused. "Oh, I thought we were going to discuss the transition." "Nothing to discuss. You're the heir. I'm operations. Business as usual." "Ethan," she said, using the cajoling tone she'd honed since childhood, which generally got her what she wanted. "Don't be like this." I eventually looked up at her. "Like what?" "I'm doing my job, Clara. Exactly my job. Nothing more, nothing less." She scowled and studied me. "Dad remarked that you hadn't returned his calls." "I've been busy. Too busy for the Westridge bid. He claimed you were meant to examine the final statistics. But you haven't sent them." I slumped back in my chair. "That wasn't in my calendar for this week. If it's urgent, I can look at it next week." "Next week?" "Ethan, the bid is due Friday." "Then someone should have put it on my schedule with adequate time for review." I moved my attention back to my computer. "I'm sure you can handle it, though. You're better with clients, after all." The hush between us lasted until Clara eventually spoke, her voice tense. "Fine. I'll tell Dad you're unavailable. You do that." After she had departed, I sat back and took a long breath. A part of me felt guilty. I'd never shied away from responsibilities, yet a huge part of me felt a sense of grim satisfaction. Allow them to witness what happened when I quit working myself to death for a company that would never be mine. At exactly 5 p.m., I turned off my computer, collected my belongings, and walked out of the office. I did not check for any last-minute emergencies. I didn't do my customary rounds to make sure everything was ready for the next day. I've just departed. The freedom was intoxicating. The Westridge bid was sent out without my assessment. We lost to a competition by a short margin due to an error in the materials estimation that I would have noticed right away. My father summoned me to his office the following Monday. "What the hell is going on with you?" he asked, his cheeks heated with rage. "We lost Westridge because of a rookie mistake in the bid." I sat peacefully across from him. "That's unfortunate." "Unfortunate? We've been courting Westridge for 4 years. This was our chance to break into the healthcare sector." "I believe Clara was handling that bid," I responded evenly. "You know she doesn't have your eye for the technical details yet," he said with frustration. "She needed your expertise on this. And if someone had scheduled time for me to review it properly, I would have provided that expertise. During business hours." Dad's eyes narrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I'm no longer available 24/7. I work from 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. I take lunch breaks. I go home on time. I don't check emails on weekends." "Since when?" "Since you made it clear that my 14 years of sacrifice for this company meant nothing in terms of succession." His face lost its color. "Is that what this is about? You're punishing the company because you're upset about Clara?" "I'm not punishing anyone," I explained. "I'm simply adjusting my work-life balance to reflect my actual position in the company, an operations manager with no stake in its future. You have the same stake as always. Nothing's changed in your compensation package." "Everything's changed, Dad. You can't expect me to work like an owner when you've made it clear I'll never be one." He raked a hand through his graying hair, frustration visible on every line of his face. "I need you, Ethan. The company needs you. And I'm here during business hours, doing exactly what my job description entails. No more, no less." Dad gave me a long stare before sighing. "I've got a meeting with the Harrington Group on Thursday. Their CFO specifically asked that you be there. Something about wanting to discuss the cost-saving measures you implemented on their tower project." I checked my calendar. I can make 9:30 to 10:30 a.m. work. If the meeting's at 8:30, then I'll be there for the second half. I stood up. Is there anything else? He looked at me as if I was a stranger. Maybe he was. No. He replied finally. That's all. As I came back to my office, I could feel employees' eyes on me. Word had spread about the Westridge offer. People whispered, wondering what was going on with the Matthews family. Let them wonder, I reasoned. Let them all wonder. The meeting with the Harrington Group proved disastrous. I came about 9:30 a.m. As planned, I slipped into the meeting room and quietly apologized for my delay. My father gave me a look that could have frozen hell, while Clara simply looked perplexed. The Harrington executives, Alexander Pierce and his executive team, were studying financial predictions for their next venture. Ah, Ethan, Alexander remarked as he recognized me, just the man we need. We were discussing the implementation of that modular approach you pioneered on our tower project. We'd like to use a similar method for the new development, but with some modifications. For the next hour, I was completely involved, answering questions, sharing insights, and making enhancements to their planned changes. This was the aspect of my career that I actually enjoyed. Solving complicated challenges, devising new techniques, and adding value. Alexander called me aside after the meeting ended. I was worried when you weren't here at the start, he told me. Frankly, your father and sisters seemed a bit out of their depth on the technical side. Clara is still learning the business, I explained tactfully. So I gathered, he murmured with sharp eyes. Your father mentioned she'll be taking over as CEO. Interesting choice. I said nothing, which appeared to tell Alexander all he needed to know. Well, he says, I want you to know that Matthews got the Harrington account because of you, Ethan. Your expertise, your creativity, your attention to detail. I hope that doesn't change, regardless of the company's internal arrangements. I appreciate that, Alexander. He gave me his card. If you ever decide to make a change, give me a call. We're always looking for talent like yours. I nodded as I pocketed the card. Thanks. As Alexander and his colleagues left, my father approached, his look a mix of relief and resentment. You saved that meeting, he said reluctantly. I did my job, I told him. Where were you for the first hour? I told you I could only make it from 9:30 to 10:30. I had other commitments. Dad's jaws tightened. What commitment could possibly be more important than the Harrington Group? My life. I answered simply. Now if you'll excuse me, I have work to finish before the end of the day. As I went away, I heard Clara question our father. What's going on with him? His furious response was, I don't know, but he needs to snap out of it before he costs us everything. I smiled to myself. They still didn't understand it. They assumed I was having a temper tantrum and would ultimately grow out of it. They had no idea I was already working on my resume and reaching out to industry contacts. I had no idea Alexander Pierce's card was not the first such offer I'd received over the years. It was simply the first one I was seriously contemplating. Let Clara handle it, I reasoned. She is the heir, after all. A week later, chaos broke unleashed. I was examining superintendent reports when my father stormed into my office, his face ashen. Harrington just called, he stated without elaborating. They're reconsidering their future projects with us. I looked up slowly. Why would they do that? Apparently, there's been a misunderstanding about the timeline for their new development. Clara spoke with Alexander yesterday and agreed to a completion date 5 months earlier than we discussed. That's not possible with their design requirements, I answered flatly. Not unless they want to increase the budget by 45%. I know that, Dad snapped. Everyone in this business knows that. But Clara thought she could win points by promising an aggressive timeline. And now Alexander is saying either we honor the timeline Clara promised, or they'll reconsider their relationship with us. $18 million in future contracts, Ethan, at risk. I leaned back in my chair, taking the information in. What do you want me to do about it? Dad looked at me with surprise. What do I want you to do? I want you to fix this. Call Alexander. Explain the situation. Work out a compromise. He respects you. That sounds like a CEO problem, I responded. Or an heir problem, not an operations manager problem. Ethan, for God's sake, this isn't the time for your attitude. The company is at stake. The company that will never be mine, I told him. The company you've made clear belongs to Clara's future, not mine, so let Clara handle it. She's the heir, right? In a fit of rage, my father's face regained its color. Is that what this is about? You're willing to let our biggest client walk away because your feelings are hurt? My feelings aren't hurt, Dad. I've simply adjusted my investment in this company to match its investment in me. He raked his hands through his hair, frustrated. What do you want? A title? Fine. We'll make you co-CEO with Clara. No, I replied gently. I don't want a consolation prize. What I wanted was for my 14 years of sacrifice to mean something. What I wanted was for you to see my value before you were in crisis. Now it's too late. Dad's expression turned from angry to fearful. You can't mean that. This is your family, your legacy. No, I corrected him. It's Clara's legacy now. You made that decision, not me. He opened his mouth to answer, but his phone rang. He looked at the screen and cursed. It's Alexander. I have to take this. Good luck, I replied, returning to my work. Dad paused in the doorway, appearing bewildered in a way I hadn't seen before. Then he answered the phone, and was gone. I sat in the solitude of my office, a peculiar emptiness forming within me. I should have felt vindicated as my predictions came true so swiftly. Instead, I felt hollow. This company had dominated my life for so long. Watching it falter should have hurt even more than it did. Perhaps I had already detached myself from Matthew's construction. Maybe it was a good thing. The Harrington crisis was only the beginning. Over the next month, 3 more significant contracts failed due to client management errors. Clara, despite her apparent people talents, was drowning. She did not comprehend the technological limits that influenced our pricing and timelines. She made promises that our teams could not keep. She prioritized acquiring new clients over maintaining old ones. Meanwhile, I delivered exactly what I promised, no more, no less, than my position required. I efficiently managed activities during business hours. I did not attend nighttime client dinners. I didn't work weekends to save failing projects. I did not provide remedies to problems that were not directly under my scope. I watched the catastrophe unfold with detached curiosity, as if watching a slow-motion car collision from a safe distance. My mother showed up at my apartment on a Sunday afternoon, which she had never done before. When I answered the door, the worry lines around her eyes were the deepest I'd ever seen them. May I come in? She inquired. I moved aside and gestured for her to enter. My apartment was sparsely furnished. I hadn't spent much time here before because I was constantly working. Now that I had recaptured my evenings and weekends, I was beginning to make it feel more like home. One wall was lined with new bookcases, each with engineering literature and novels I'd been meaning to read for years. A half-finished model of the Harrington Tower was on my dining table. Mom spotted it right away. You're building a model of the tower? Just a hobby, I replied with a shrug. Something to do with my free time. She ran her fingers over the table's edge, avoiding my gaze. Your father is worried sick. The company is in trouble, Ethan. I'm aware. Clara is trying her best, but she's not qualified to run a construction company, I said to her. She never was. Mom's eyes blazed. That's not fair. She has other strengths. Being your favorite isn't a business qualification, Mom. She recoiled, like if I had slapped her. Is that what you think? That we favored Clara? Didn't you? You gave her the company despite her having no relevant experience or demonstrated commitment. What would you call that? Mom slumped onto my couch, suddenly looking 64 years old. We thought, your father thought, she could bring fresh perspectives, new ideas. And you were so good at the operational side. So good you took me for granted, I remarked quietly. So reliable. You assumed I'd always be there, working myself to death for a company that would never be mine. The company has always been yours too, Ethan. I laughed without humor. No, it hasn't. And now you're here because you're finally realizing what that means. Mom's eyes flooded with tears. Your father wants to talk to you. Really talk about the future, about your role. Will you meet with him? I pondered denying but realized I didn't have the heart for it. Regardless, they were still my parents. When? Tomorrow evening. Dinner at the house. She stood, went toward the door, and then hesitated. He's not sleeping, Ethan. None of this is easy for him. It's not easy for me either, I explained. The difference is, I've had 14 years to get used to disappointment. After she departed, I went to my Harrington Tower model and meticulously glued tiny pieces together, ensuring that each component was correctly placed and each connection secure. If only real life could be created with such accuracy. I got to my parents' house at exactly 6:30 p.m. the following evening. The traditional Georgian-style house looked the same as always. Scrupulously kept and imposingly elegant. I grew up in this house and had spent many holidays and family dinners there. It seemed like I was attending a museum about my past life. My mother answered the door with relief on her face. "You came?" I said I would. She took me into the dining room where my father and Clara were already sitting. Clara looked up with a peculiar smile and black rings under her eyes. Dad stood there as I entered, his expression unreadable. "Ethan," he said, holding out his hand. "Thank you for coming." I shook his hand briefly before taking my seat across from Clara. The table was set with Mom's finest china and crystal, reserved for special occasions. A peace offering, perhaps. Dinner was a stressful affair. We made stilted small chat about the weather, my mother's garden, and anything except the company. After the dessert plates were cleaned, my father cleared his throat. "I think we should discuss the situation at Matthews Construction," he told me. "What situation is that?" I inquired, though we were all aware. Dad's jaws tightened. "We've lost 3 significant contracts in 6 weeks. The Harrington Group has threatened to cut their future projects with us. Subcontractors are concerned about our stability. The dilemma, Ethan, is that the firm your grandfather started, which I helped build into what it is today, is in serious risk of failing." "And you think that's my fault?" "I think you could help prevent it if you wanted to," he said evenly. Clara leaned forwards. "Ethan, I know I messed up. I'm in over my head, and I can admit that. But this is our family legacy. Please don't let it fall apart because you're angry with us." I watched my sister's face, noting her real grief and newfound humility. "It's not about anger, Clara. It's about value. About recognition." "We recognize your value," Dad emphasized. "That's why we're here. We need you back, fully committed." "On what terms?" Dad exchanged glances with my mother. "Equal partnership with Clara. Co-CEOs with a clear division of responsibilities. You handle operations, technical oversight, and project management. She handles business development, client relations, marketing, and succession." I pressed. "What happens when you fully retire?" "The two of you will share ownership, 60-40. I sat back and considered the proposition. It was more than I had anticipated. A full reversal of their previous decision. But it seemed hollow. This was not a recognition of my worth, it was a panicked reaction to a situation. "Why the change of heart?" I inquired. 8 weeks ago, Clara was the clear heir. What's different now besides the company being in trouble?" Dad's expression tightened. "You want me to say I was wrong? Fine, I was wrong. I underestimated how crucial your specific expertise is to the company's success. I overestimated how quickly Clara could learn the business. I made a mistake in judgment." "Is that what you need to hear?" "David," my mother said, resting her hand on his arm. I shook my head slowly. "What I needed was for you to see my value before the crisis. To recognize my 14 years of dedication before everything started falling apart. To choose me because I earned it, not because you're desperate." "So what are you saying?" Father demanded. "You'll let the company fail out of pride?" "No," I responded. "I'm saying I'm done working for Matthews Construction." The hush that ensued was absolute. Clara's face wrinkled. Mom's hand rose to her mouth. Dad simply gazed, incredulity engraved on every line of his face. "You can't mean that," he finally said. "I do." I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope, which I placed on the table. "My formal resignation, effective 3 weeks from today. I've accepted a position with Harrington Development as their new Chief Operations Officer." "Harrington?" Dad's voice was scarcely audible. "You're going to work for Alexander?" "He made me an offer I couldn't refuse. Full executive authority over operations. A significant ownership stake after 5 years. Recognition of my expertise and value from day one, not as a desperate afterthought." Clara discovered her voice. "You're abandoning us, your own family?" "No, Clara. The family abandoned me when you decided I was only good enough to work behind the scenes while you took center stage. I'm simply recognizing that reality and making the best choice for my future." Dad moved away from the table, rage replacing shock. "So that's it. 14 years, and you just walk away? To our biggest competitor, no less?" "I gave Matthews Construction 14 years of my life, Dad. 70-hour weeks, holidays, weekends, personal sacrifices you can't even imagine. And when it came time to decide the future of the company, you didn't even consider me. You just assumed I'd keep working myself to death to support Clara's inheritance." We've offered to fix that mistake, Mom said. Equal partnership. Equal ownership. Too little. Too late. I muttered, getting up from my chair. Ethan, please. Clara said, her voice breaking. We can work this out. The company needs you. I need you. I glanced at my sister intently. The golden child. The favorite. Always the focus of attention. For the first time, I noticed terror in her eyes. Fear and the understanding that she was out of her element. You should have thought of that before you accepted a company you weren't qualified to run. I said softly. Actions have consequences, Clara. Welcome to the real world. When I turned to leave, my father's voice halted me at the door. If you walk out now, don't expect to be welcomed back, he added, his voice full with sorrow. You're choosing to become our competitor. There's no coming back from that. I halted, resting my hand on the doorframe. I'm not your enemy, Dad. I'm just not your safety net anymore. You made your choice. And now I've made mine. The drive home felt weird. I felt lighter than I had in years, as if a burden I had carried for so long had finally been lifted. There was also despair, because the familial relationships would never be the same. For the dream of leading Matthew's construction, which had perished 8 weeks prior. But largely there was excitement, a new beginning, a chance to be recognized for my abilities, and to create something on my own terms. My phone buzzed with texts from Clara and my mother, pleading with me to rethink. I hushed it and placed it into the passenger seat. Their terror was no longer my responsibility. I was finally free after 14 years. My 3-week notice period was, to put it mildly, painful. My father rarely spoke to me, only interacting via harsh emails when absolutely required. Clara swung between anguished appeals and chilly stillness. The office was buzzing with rumors and curiosity. I worked hard to document all of my processes to ensure a smooth transition for whoever took over my responsibilities. Despite everything, I did not want Matthews Construction's employees to suffer as a result of my family's faults. Many of them had been with the company for years, and they deserved better than to become casualties in a family power struggle. Grace prepared a modest farewell gathering for me on my last day. The majority of the staff attended, but my family was notably absent. Longtime colleagues exchanged handshakes, best wishes, and even a few tears. I committed to stay in touch, understanding that certain friendships would survive the move while others would not. As I was packing the last of my personal belongings into a box, my father stepped in the doorway to my office. I thought you'd be gone by now, he remarked, his tone deliberately bland. Just finishing up. I shut the box and faced him. Was there something you needed? He walked carefully inside the room, glancing around at the now bare walls that had once displayed my engineering degrees and project images. The Harrington Group officially notified us they won't be pursuing additional projects with us. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you? His gaze met mine, probing. I nodded. Alexander made it clear they're following me to my new position. He nodded slowly, as if he had anticipated this response but hoped for something different. You always were a man of your word. That's something I always admired about you. He extended his hand. After a few hesitation, I shook it. Good luck, Ethan. I mean that. Thank you. I wish the same for Matthew's Construction. As he turned to leave, he stopped in the doorway. The door isn't closed forever, you know. If things don't work out at Harrington, if you ever want to come home. This isn't my home anymore, Dad. You made sure of that. He flinched slightly and nodded in response. Goodbye, son. Goodbye, Dad. After he departed, I stood in the empty office for a long time, memories flooding through me. My first day as operations manager, late evenings going over bids, and the jubilation when we won the Harrington Tower contract. I had spent so much of my life within these walls. But that chapter was coming to a close. It was time to compose another one. I grabbed my package and walked out, nodding goodbye to Grace as I passed the registration counter. Outside, the afternoon sun shone brightly, and the future stretched before me like an open road. My phone vibrated in my pocket. Alexander Pierce is presumably calling to confirm my start date on Monday. As I carried my box into the car, I noticed the Matthews Construction sign over the door. The family name that had defined me for so long. My heritage, my burden, my almost legacy. Not anymore. I got in my car and drove away without looking back. I'm no longer playing a supporting role in my own story. No longer taken for granted but valued for who I am and what I can achieve. It was not the ending I had envisioned for myself. It was better. a start of my own making. Let Clara handle Matthew's construction. She was the heir, after all. But I was finally free. 8 months later, I stood in Alexander Pierce's office, overlooking the metropolitan skyline. The Harrington Tower glittered in the afternoon sun, a tribute to what I could achieve when my abilities were recognized. The board approved the expansion plan, Alexander explained, sliding a document across his desk. They were particularly impressed with your efficiency projections. We're greenlit for the West Coast offices. I leafed over the records, a sensation of accomplishment filling my heart. In half a year, I had revolutionized Harrington's operations, streamlining processes and implementing innovations that raised profitability by about 25%. That's great news, I said. When do we break ground? Next month, and they want you to oversee the initial setup personally. Alexander sat back in his chair and studied me. You've exceeded every expectation, Ethan. I knew you were good, but this. He pointed to the performance reports on his desk. This is exceptional. Thank you for the opportunity to prove it. No need for thanks. In business, recognizing talent is just good sense. He hesitated, his expression becoming intrigued. Have you heard from your family lately? The question took me off guard. I'd managed to avoid thinking about Matthew's construction, my parents, or Clara for weeks at a time. Not directly, no. I heard through the grapevine that they're struggling. Lost the Westmore project to Klein and Associates last week. I nodded, experiencing a complex combination of emotions. Satisfaction, definitely, but also a small tinge of sorrow. Not for my decision to leave, never, but for the shattered family relationships that resulted from it. They made their bed, I finally said. Alexander nodded carefully. Indeed, they did. Still, family is complicated. Alexander's remarks stuck with me as I drove home that evening. Family was complicated. Despite everything, there were times when I missed Sunday dinners at my parents' house, the easy conversation with Clara before business intervened, the sensation of belonging to something larger than my own existence. My phone rang through the car speakers, a number I didn't know. Hello? Ethan, it's Grace. Grace from Matthews, your former receptionist. Grace, good to hear from you. How are you? I'm fine, but... She paused. I thought you should know. Your father had a heart attack last night. The earth appeared to tilt on its axis. Is he? He's stable, in the hospital. They're saying it was stress-related. Her voice softened. The company's in trouble, Ethan. Real trouble. Your sister is in over her head and your father's been working himself to the bone trying to keep things afloat. Why are you telling me this, Grace? Because despite everything, they're your family. And because there are 45 families who depend on Matthew's construction for their livelihoods. Good people who had nothing to do with how you were treated. After we hung up, I sat in my car, watching the sunset paint the sky with orange and pink. 8 months ago, I left Matthew's construction without looking back. Resolved to establish myself somewhere. I'd exceeded my greatest aspirations. I had nothing more to prove. Not to my parents, Clara, or even to myself. Perhaps that is why, for the first time since leaving, I allowed myself to seriously consider what was going on at my family's company. Not with satisfaction for their difficulties, but with an objective assessment of the circumstance. Matthew's construction was failing. My father was at the hospital. Dozens of families faced an uncertain future. And while none of that was my duty, and I'd earned the right to say, let Clara handle it, I discovered I couldn't simply ignore it. Not because I owe anything to my family. Not because I forgot about their betrayal. But the betrayal no longer defined me. I'd moved on, established a new life, and demonstrated my value. I was no longer pained, and was acting from a position of strength. I picked up the phone and dialed Clara's number. It rang 3 times before she responded, her voice thin and exhausted. Ethan, is that you? It's me. Grace called about Dad. How is he? Stable. She seemed fatigued. The doctors say he needs to reduce his stress levels dramatically. And the company? After a brief pause. It's bad. We're going to lose the Miller contract next week unless we can somehow cut costs by 12%. 3 project managers have quit. Suppliers are demanding payment up front because they've heard rumors we're going under. Her voice crackled. I don't know what to do, Ethan. I'm in so far over my head. 8 months ago such remarks would have made me feel vindicated. Now they've made me sad. I'm headed to the hospital, I finally said. We should talk. About Dad. About the company, about options for everyone involved. You'd do that? After everything? I reflected on Alexander's statements about family being complicated, the thrill of proving myself at Harrington, and the 45 families who relied on Matthew's construction. I'm not making any promises, I explained gently. But yes, I'll come talk. As I got back on the road, I realized something essential. True freedom meant more than merely fleeing the past or proving one's value. It was about choosing your path ahead from a position of strength, on your own terms. It may even be necessary to circle back at times. Not back where you started, but somewhere new, built on the old. I wasn't sure what would emerge of my chat with Clara. Maybe nothing. Perhaps a consultancy agreement could assist stabilize the company. Maybe something else entirely. What I did know was that whatever occurred next would be my decision, made not out of desperation or obligation, but with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what they were worth. And that, more than anything else, was the actual victory. Living well, on my own terms, with the freedom to pick my own way ahead.